Congressman, good to have you on the Ed Show tonight. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Ed. Sad times.
We're having quite a debate in this country about gun control, obviously, and there's questions of bans coming up in the Senate. Senator Feinstein says that she's going to reintroduce the assault weapons ban. As it stands, could you go along with that?
Well, I would have to see what she has in mind, and as you know, the AR-15 that was used in this unfortunate tragedy was not considered an assault weapon, and I don't know if she would put that in there. It only shoots one round at a time, which is the definition of assault weapons, but I think to put it on the table, to discuss it and thoroughly vet this, I think it's a good process, and I'm not afraid of it.
Well, that's exactly where I think the country is looking for definition right now on what exactly is an assault weapon. And in the state of Connecticut, the definition of assault weapon is that it's got to have a folding or telescoping stock. It's got to have a pistol grip, a bayonet mount, a grenade launcher, and a flash supporter. Now, the gun that was used, the .223 Bushmaster, doesn't have any of those things. But many Americans would consider that to be an assault weapon because they had 30-round clips in them. I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well, you know, I think a lot of the things that you mentioned are actually cosmetic parts of a gun. You know, they might make it look ugly and mean, but the real question in my mind is, can you pull the trigger one time and have multiple rounds fired? Because that's what would make an assault weapon. And Connecticut does have an assault weapon ban. It has 30 rifles that are considered banned, but this one does not fall under that definition. So in my opinion, rather than focus on the looks of the gun, we should focus on the action. What does it actually do when you squeeze the trigger? And to me, that's where the gun is more lethal. But, you know, Ed, I am a Second Amendment guy. But I do think having this discussion is a very important part of the process that we must go through as Americans.
Well, there's no question about that, and I appreciate that. We need a discussion. But Americans would look at what happened in Newtown, Connecticut, and say that that's an assault weapon. I mean, there was rapid fire that took the lives of 28 people, 20 of them children, and that is the main focus in all of this. And so we get into definition of what is an assault weapon. I mean, 30 rounds in a clip in the minds of many Americans is too many to have, whether it's a single shot, rapid fire, or if it's an automatic fire. So how far are you willing to go? Are you really willing to go right down to the definition of pulling the trigger as to whether it's an assault weapon or not, or just how much damage the weapon can do?
Well, you know, I think they're almost one and the same. It really does get down to the action of the gun, the pulling of the trigger, what happens when you pull the trigger. And it doesn't really matter if it's an ugly-looking, mean military-type gun or not. It really matters what happens when you pull the trigger. So I think the discussion is a good one. And as you know, I've also said you cannot leave out the mental health situation of this.
Okay. And I agree with that. I agree. And we're going to get the mental health part of it in just a moment. But you're satisfied with this gun that was used being legal, that there should be no ban on the Bush .223 Bushmaster?
Well, I think that, again, it is not an assault weapon.
Okay.
Now, as
by definition, it's not.
And as I understand it, that what Senator Feinstein wants to do is expand the definition to some 900 guns. And I was here during President Clinton's assault weapon ban, and I know there was a huge debate as to what actually was one and what wasn't one. And I think we all got to get educated as to terms of what is an assault weapon and what is it capable of doing.
That's the key. What's the capability? And if you have firearms that are capable within seconds of putting 30 rounds off, many Americans are going to view that as an assault weapon. And so we get down to the definition, not the NRA's definition, but the definition of what kind of damage a firearm can do. And so you're comfortable with this firearm, the Bushmaster, being legal in Connecticut. I would take your answer on that. Now, the other thing is mental health. You know, you have been against Obamacare. Obamacare, of course, would bring 30 million more people into coverage, which, of course, would cover mental health examinations. And, of course, we could set up some kind of database that would help the sharing of information. When you say
and you can do that without, well, you can do that, of course, Ed, without Obamacare. And part of what I think we should do is more local grants so that the police stations and the people, as you know, in Connecticut, you need to register, you need to have classes for certain handguns. You have to be under 21 years old, over 21 years old. And so to me, putting on the mental health where you do have some local grants that the law enforcement and the mayors, the political people, if you will, in a city can say, okay, where are the red flags and what can we do when we spot the red flags?
I mean, this morning you said on MSNBC a 1-800 number. I take issue with that. We need a lot more than that. Now you're saying that you'd be willing to put grant money, federal grant money, to help out mental health so we could have better gun control in this country?
Yes, and that's part of the National Institute of Mental Health. That's one of the things that they're talking about. There is a 1-800 number out there right now. And let me say, that should not be the end all, but I think a piece of it where you have somebody who's acting peculiar or doing something and you want to find out, okay, is this, you know, we got to be very sensitive, of course, to privacy issues and so forth. But I think to get more information, just as you would do on substance abuse and addiction, I think that's a reasonable step.